Hey, Zac, have you heard of the Vivaldi inheritance?
Isn't that the premise of the television show that we're currently watching?
Vivaldi's nuts.
Oh.
Got 'em.
Let's roll the titles.
Hello and welcome back to the Davis on Davis podcast, the show where me and Zac have a quick heart-to-heart before every recording, and then I say the most infuriatingly dumb joke I can think of to kick us off.
It's better than me having to come up with dumb jokes, because as I think it's clear in every episode anyone's ever listened to, I pride myself on coming up with a joke for the end of the episode, and usually I forget to do it. So in the last 5 minutes of the podcast, I have to come up with it. So yeah, at least you come prepared. At least you do your homework, Louis.
That's your revenge.
In a way.
That's how we bring it full circle.
Revenge is Revenge is a dish best served improvised.
Yes.
That's quite good. I'll get that copyrighted.
It is quite good. Oh yes, I say what our names are now. Okay, so I'm Louis Davis. You are Zac Copeland Green. How are you doing? How's your week been?
It's good. I long-time listeners to the podcast will have potentially surmised that I've been completing a master's degree during the progress of this podcast since we started. I've finished my master's degree now. This is where Louis inserts a sound effect of people going, woohoo!
Hooray! That one.
And I am now just unemployed. And this is where Louis inserts a sound effects of people going, oh. So yeah, I'm currently unemployed and seeking work.
One of us.
So yeah, that's very much. But no, been having a week of learning to live and love life again, if that makes sense. I've been reading, I've been watching films, I've been sending off my CV, which, just normal everyday life things, And I've been sleeping. I've been as in getting a good solid 8 hours of sleep every night. It's been great.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
How are you, Louis? And you can't come quite close to the nirvana of 8 hours of sleep, I'm sure, that I'm experiencing.
No. The only thing I can really say I've done this week is also read that book that was giving me like a proper existential crisis, as I described it, the opposite of ego death. I never actually said it in the recording, but I did in a note last time say that it's The Candy House by Jennifer Egan. I do recommend it, along with its sort of the book it's a sequel to, A Visit from the Goon Squad. Very interesting sort of interconnected lives across a single timeline. But it actually gets quite a bit less existential towards the end. So it's actually just been like a nice, interesting read that hasn't made me stare into the middle distance at all anymore. So that's good.
And here's me reading Richard Osman's Thursday Murder Club and just going, ha 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 ha.
Wow.
Aren't these old people funny?
Are they funny?
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be. The book is supposed to be. It's supposed to be funny.
Good.
It is. Good. Yeah, I'm not just laughing at old people. That would be cruel.
No, that would be cruel to just laugh at someone because of something. They probably have less control than you might initially think. We are talking about episode 3 of Mine or Mine. And this is what I like to call podcasting on expert difficulty, because we're starting to have some wonders about the early RTD era that we came in pretty.
I suppose we're not scathing. We're unscathing.
Yes,
if that's a word.
No, that is absolutely it. We were unscathing, and now we're sort of wondering how scathing we ought to be.
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting one. Because Louis pointed out to me off air that Mine or Mine, because it's sort of as close to a sitcom that RTD has ever created, it's not really dug into any broader societal issues. Like we're very clearly from all our previous shows we've discussed, there's been some commentary on the LGBT community, or in the case of Zac and Cumming, obviously we want to sit and discuss theology and religion and its place in modern society.
Yeah, and also the context of the time, the new atheism movement of the early 2000s. I don't know if we said it explicitly, but it clearly comes from that time.
And Mine or Mine is just sort of, ha-ha, Swansea. That we haven't really sunk our teeth into any really deep issues. Until today, where we're going to try and unpack Mine or Mine as a product of its time. Now, bear in mind, Louis and I are watching this show for the first time, and we are recording each episode of the podcast after we've seen the latest episode. So we're talking today about episode 3. We haven't seen the last few episodes of the show, so we don't quite know where it goes. But so far, we've seen half the show, haven't we?
Yes.
We're going to discuss some of the dated... what was dated in? I don't want to say dated stereotypes, but more
dated elements
of the show.
Just to keep it broad at this moment, yeah.
Yeah. There's a topic of discussion in and of itself. The show really leans into comedy, so maybe let's ask of it what is funny and why is it funny.
Yeah,
that's a good thing to say.
No, that's very beautifully put. I mean, look, this goes on the internet. Okay, people like dunking on stuff on the internet. If you're here for that, welcome. But we're going to try and balance our dunks with knuds. I did just work out what that was backwards in my head. I'm sorry. I'm going to lift up the covers, and see how the sausage is made. Not actually. This isn't a behind-the-scenes podcast.
But we are going to be squeezing the sausage and giving it a taste. Yeah, I didn't like that.
Let's get into it. Let's just go right into it. Okay. So, see, that's the thing. That was a nice innuendo that everyone can chuckle at and then, move on. But we start off with Max driving recklessly. We don't know why. We do know that Danny is in the back of the taxi. People are phoning around saying that he's gone mad, and Maria's like, how can he go mad? He's already mad.
Yeah.
At that point, actually, Gethin, Maria's boyfriend, who I might have been referring to as Gareth previously, it's Gethin, proposes to Maria, and she yells back, I'm on the phone! And that's a good bit of comedy.
Yeah, it was interesting because we see this scene cutting between the different family members and the Max driving this taxi like crazy. And the first thing I noticed that Gethin was round at Maria's house, and they've obviously been sleeping together again. Because I think
yes,
the end of the previous episode, I don't know, we got the sense that Danny sort of keeps looking long at Maria, and Gethin sort of wormed his way back into Maria's life, clearly because he thinks something to do with the inheritance. And he very nonchalantly now does this. Calling it a proposal, I think, is giving it a lot of weight. He just asks her.
Yeah, I guess the idea of a proposal is there is some kind of item, or at least a stunt.
He doesn't get down on one knee.
No.
So is it a proposal if someone doesn't get down on one knee? Yes, it can be. That's a very ableist worldview of me.
That's why I sort of said stunt in the most general sense,
During the phone call, and we get great senses of all the characters we've got. So Candy notes that before Max left the house, he kissed the gay boy goodbye, referencing Leo. I'm not about to unpack.
Well, I listened to the commentary with Russell T Davies and Nicola Schindler, and basically towards the end of the episode, he does confirm that Leo is supposed to be gay but doesn't realise it yet. And so I thought, oh, okay, is all of Candy's cognitive ability channeled into a gaydar then? That's the only thing she's cognizant of before someone else.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, apologies for making reference to Doctor Who, but I'm specifically thinking about Russell T Davies' style of writing in the first series of Doctor Who. It's episode 4, Aliens of London. Rose Tyler calls the Doctor. She says to him, "You're so gay." And since then, that's been questioned and set and reanalyzed by people on the internet under a modern eye, going, "Oh my God, Russell T Davies is homophobic." I think a lot of these people don't realise exactly who Russell T Davies actually is, other than the writer of Doctor Who. And he has sort of said that was just him capturing the way that people in 2005 spoke. And we're here in the early 2000s, gay, calling someone gay in a derogatory way. It wasn't right, but it kind of had, you could do it.
Exactly. And I think, spoiler alert, there are a lot of jokes in this episode at the expense of Big Claire's weight. And you could say that for those jokes, but I think there is a point where it's not as easily defensible and I'll point it out when we get to it.
Yeah.
But that leads us nicely to Max arriving at the beach to basically pick up Claire and Rico, who are walking along it for some reason. And I heard in the director's commentary that the road actually does go onto the beach, because there's a road that suddenly goes onto a beach, and that's an actual road. That's not just a trick of filmmaking.
Ooh.
They like to emphasize that because it's a bit of Swansea knowledge.
Because I thought Max was going crazy, and I put in my notes, I thought he was about to GTA 5 Rico and Claire. Not that I've ever played GTA 5, but in my head it's the kind of game where you drive a car onto the beach and run people over.
Yeah.
And my animal brain just thought, he's going crazy, he's driving on the beach that doesn't look like it's supposed to be a road, although apparently it is a road, according to the commentary.
Well, I think it's just once he sort of crests the taxi over like a bit of a bump, then it becomes just the beach. So I don't know if the beach itself is road.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he picks him up. He says, you know what? I'm happy for you. I'm giving you a wedding present. You get the town. I'm going to take you to the town hall. At this point, he says to Claire, sit in the middle. That's a good girl. Because he's driving on sand. The taxi needs to be balanced in terms of weight distribution. Yeah. That's the joke.
See, that went completely over my head. That's how terrible that is.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, because in the commentary, this was described as one of the first of Russell's fat jokes, which we were all a bit worried and sensitive about, but worked brilliantly. Now, I'm pretty sure this director's commentary, or I keep saying that, it wasn't, it was executive producer's commentary, was made in 2005-2006, because they talk about an upcoming show called Torchwood, which I'm sure we'll never hear from again based on the premise of this podcast. But so that gives you an idea that this was it was like a bit retrospective, because they were looking back on the show after having made Casanova, but it wasn't that retrospective.
Interesting. It'd be interesting to hear their opinions today.
Anyway, this is the only mention of the jokes at Claire's expense in the commentary. So I'm sorry, Zach, you're not going to hear much more from the commentary.
Okay. Well, the listener, that's Louis' summary of the commentary. You don't need to listen to that. You only need to listen to this now.
So now we get a bit more context. Basically, Val is telling her mum that the reason Max is doing all of this is because he is giving the town away, seemingly because of the affair, because he wants to dedicate himself to Val and he doesn't care about the town anymore. And of course, Val's mum is pretty disappointed by this, because we know that she is, her whole thing is about getting her daughter to do some like Bene Gesserit stuff and marry into wealth and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Because and meanwhile, Val is now preparing to sort of be quote unquote poor again and have to work hard to make all the money. So she's thought she can go into making meat pies. She's come round to her mum's house with a pie for her to taste while they're having this conversation. And notably, I wonder if the commentary has any insight into this. It probably doesn't. I swear, I've mentioned it before, Val and her friend, surely they're a couple. Surely they're a pair of old lesbians.
You know what? I hope so.
Because they're living together. They're always in the pub together, and now it's early in the morning and they're both in their dressing gowns in the kitchen together. Surely, yeah, they can be friends that just live together, or she could have just stayed over, or she could have just come round, she could be the next door neighbour. But in my head, I quite like the idea that she's secretly now in a gay relationship.
So now we're in the town hall, and Iris, the council leader, is basically explaining to Rico and Claire what it means to own the town, and basically you have to do the bins. This comedian who I have mentioned on podcast before, Milo Edwards, he has a good bit about bins, and basically about how politics in the UK is like 50% policies and debates and all that stuff, and 50% bins.
Yeah.
Or if you're in local politics, 100% bins. Yeah. You know, that's what people care about. And so it's funny, we found the one person who doesn't hear the "you'll be in charge of the bins" and go, "Finally, I could do the job so much better." She actually doesn't want to deal with the bins because I guess they're a bit dirty.
Yeah, and they don't really sound very glamorous. And I think Big Claire is Claire is chasing after the glamour of owning a town. Iris is really pulling the short straw because, bear in mind, Iris is in currently. She's the council leader. She's in charge of the council. She woke up one day and said, "You know what I really want to do? I want to be in charge of the bins."
Yeah.
So clearly there's some, and I won't lie to you, maybe this makes me sound really odd, but I have opinions on the bins. And if you gave me the chance to sort out the bins, I'd sort out the bins.
I literally just explained about how that's actually what everyone would say,
Exactly.
Because sort of, you buy your food from like the local shop and the supermarket and stuff, and that's you sort of making a choice with your money. But then the bins is not something you pay for, which good, but also it means that it's probably like how a lot of people sort of interact with the local council, that and potholes.
Yeah. You say we don't have to pay for the bins. For 1 year, our green bin was a subscription service.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say technically you pay through taxes, but that's pretty interesting. Wow.
No, we paid through taxes and had to pay a Netflix-like fee. But that's a discussion for another podcast.
No wonder you. This has lit up something in you if you've seen all the sides of it.
But yeah, no. Claire does not want to run the bins,
and Iris uses this to convince her to give up the town. She really is like she really holds it above her head, and then Claire kind of cracks. And the whole time, Danny has been saying, "Can you talk to Rico? Because Rico, the grandfather, is the actual owner."
Yeah, and it's an interesting portrayal of Iris Price. She's clearly a very intelligent woman. Obviously, she's the council leader of Swansea. She's got to that position for a reason. She can see how to play the game, and she can see that it's by, I quote unquote, manipulating. It's not quite manipulation, but the way that she sort of leans in and puts her and Claire on that same level. We're both Swansea girls. We're both, we're none of these fancy schmancy English lawyers. You and me, we're local. We can sort something out here. We can all be rational. Very clever, and my respect for Iris is it's pretty high at this point. She's. I mean, obviously, I want there to be drama, and I kind of want the Vivaldis to own the town because I think that's funny.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I think
she's clever. I got to respect that.
She's a female character that seems to be acting sort of in her interests and rationally, and I'm sure that's all of them, or maybe not. We'll see. Because of this, Claire says, "Okay, well, you know what? I want a house and a pub, and I want to be Lord Mayor," and they're like, "It's a deal." Outside, Maria says that about her being Lord Mayor, "That's a bitching office. Thank God for the steelworks." I mean, is that funny?
Yeah, no. I got that joke about the chain of the Lord Mayor, and I didn't think it was funny.
No.
If I'm perfectly honest, no.
But once again, this is a character making the joke who right now is not happy with what Claire has done.
That's a very good point.
We'll keep that context for the time being and come back to it in a bit later. Now, at dinner, actually, they then do a toast, and Maria sort of jumps in with her sort of, "Ooh, can I do a toast?" kind of thing, and calls Claire a fat swindling bitch.
And given that they actually use the word fat to describe her all the time, it's interesting how that word in that context gains a little bit extra viciousness. But I think this is very much motivated by Maria's anger.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, during the scene, during the toast, just before Maria makes this big insult to Claire, Max is celebrating everything that's happened in the family, namely the one engagement between Claire and Rico, Maria and Gethins, which Maria is like, the guy's like, it's not happening. And interestingly enough, we had seen a conversation between Gethin and Maria, which I think is interesting. Gethin says to Maria that they should get married because Maria doesn't trust Gethin.
Yeah.
And she should therefore pin him down through marriage, which I just think was so interesting because it's the antithesis of why you normally would get married. It's a big move to marry someone, to make them legally your family, your partner. You'd have to trust someone because it gives them a lot of power and responsibility. And he's basically suggested the exact opposite, which is in one respect clever that he's been able to manipulate language in such a way, but also shows his true colours, I think. And obviously this is feeling very background at this time, because really this episode is about Claire and sort of how her actions are causing conflict within the Vivaldi family. But interesting that this conflict is going on in the background, I think, a little bit.
I thought it was quite like funny that he was saying that, but also, as we'll kind of see eventually, like Maria will sort of fall for this and through a bunch of things eventually say yes. And I thought, like, she can see through this. Surely she's not going to actually say yes. Like, this is allowed to be sort of funny, and then eventually she's like, this is ridiculous. But like, because in the first episode she was sort of talks about how like she's quite intelligent, but she pretends to be a bit less intelligent and know fewer things so that guys will like her. And you think that's interesting, and it's sort of, that's not really getting explored at this point, and it's, in my opinion, getting betrayed a little bit.
Interesting. There's a bit of a callback next. Not really. It's just that Max goes to offer a toast to his lovely wife in the kitchen, Val, and when she says no, he tries to put the bottle. I don't know if it's Prosecco or champagne. It's never quite made clear. It's probably Prosecco, I reckon. And he throws it in the bin, and Val says, that doesn't go in the bin, that goes outside. Clever reference to the bins there.
Yeah, apparently this was very ahead of its time in 2004, because nowadays it's such a common thing of which recycling is it, you know?
Yeah, I wouldn't put because I think there's also liquid in the bottle.
No, yeah, I was thinking just put a spoon in it and put it in the fridge or something.
Max goes outside onto the balcony where Danny is, and he sort of apologizes for letting this whole scenario get carried away, saying he'll be off in the morning. And I thought that this moment was quite sad, because Danny's movement into Swansea was the instigator for this drama, and it almost makes you think, oh, is this show going to end now? It's a bit of a upset. Obviously it's not, because we're literally at the beginning of episode 3 out of 5 or 6. But yeah, and then he gives this mini speech where he complains about following the rules of life and the mundanity of sort of, you know, having the kind of job that makes you wear a suit, and how this whole scenario, he let it get carried away because it was this idea of changing the mundanity. And if a random man called Max could own the whole of Swansea, how cool would that be? And it's an interesting little tender moment between the two.
No, yeah, it is a beautiful bit of dialogue between two men.
Meanwhile, a third man lurks in the darkness.
Yes, Eggman is back. The Sam the Eggman, Dr. Robotnik himself. His scenes, I think his scenes in the episode are all very good. He's just walking around, and Max is like, it's a bit late for eggs, and he's like, the eggs never sleep, you know, or something like that. It's generally quite good. And I think from here, we go to the following day, which I was counting up how many days it's been. So Saturday and Sunday was episode 1, Monday was episode 2, Vivaldi Day, which was today, was Tuesday, which means now it's Wednesday. Okay, they've been at this for 5 days, and we'll be at it for 12 weeks doing a bi-weekly podcast. And so Candy records a song.
Can I just say, it's a bop. Where is it? I want it on Spotify. Because she's not awful. I kind of expected her to be terrible, and it's not bad. It's not awful.
No, I was going to say, like, she's good. It starts, so she does one recording, and she's sort of speaking with quite like a happy, or singing with quite a happy tone, and you know, it's pretty inoffensive. You know, you could stick it on, it'll be good. And then the surfer guy from the last episode is producing it in this studio, and he says that, like, after one take, he's like, yeah, that's good, because his plan is to press 200 copies and distribute them while, you know, she has like a bit of fame as someone who was naked on the news, and then that's kind of it. But this mysterious woman comes into the recording studio and is like, I'm just such a big fan, I want your autograph. And then she manages to sort of say that, ooh, you know, it could have been better, and then gives her advice to tap into her sadness. And we do get a great line, which is basically Candy's explaining that, well, you know, like, my best friend is marrying my grandfather, and I'm not happy with that. And then the producer guy's like, we're not doing country and western, which is a fun little callback to Bob and Rose, using the exact same phrasing, not just saying we're not doing a country song, we're not doing country and western. And then Candy does the song again with that sadness, and it sounds better, and you hear it like sound better, which I thought was well done.
Yeah.
Because, like, what does it mean for a song to sound better? But the difference is audible and it's better.
There's a richer, more layered sense of in her voice, which is what the mysterious woman said. Interesting thing to note. Another line that I thought was amusing. There was a small sense of mystery around this woman in the wheelchair, because Candy appears to recognise her, though we've sort of been trained to almost expect Candy not to know where she recognises her from. And the woman's like, oh yeah, you will recognise me, but think of me with legs. And then Candy asks, legs where? And that sort of sent my mind spiralling as the scene moved on, as to imagining this woman with legs sprouting out of her forehead.
Yes. So for context, she's in a wheelchair.
Oh yeah, did we not mention that? Sorry.
No, I was about to, and then you kept going, and I was like, it's funnier if the listener doesn't know for a few seconds.
Yes, sorry, yes. This woman, she rolls into the scene, and that's how she manages to get into this recording studio, because she points out that no one ever stops a wheelchair.
Yeah. Which
I think is, so we've been talking about stuff that is perhaps outdated for the early 2000s and things that are maybe slightly ahead of their time. I think one thing, again, it's not my place to say as an able-bodied person, but from what I have read and heard surrounding RTD's use of disabled representation, he usually seems to do it quite well. That note about people not stopping a wheelchair, it makes me think of awkwardness around disability, and the fact that a security guard might actually be less likely to stop someone in a wheelchair for fear of an awkward conversation. I think is an interesting idea to just play with in an offhand remark.
No, it certainly could have been worse. I thought once again, can't speak on physical disability, but I think because no one dwelled on it and she was the one saying it, it didn't hit you the way that some other jokes in this episode do.
Yeah.
Didn't whack you across the face, yeah. Yeah, so now Val is talking about her meat pie business with Max. So we know that she wants to make money, she wants to make pies, she wants to sell those pies for money and exchange the money for goods and services. But she can't because of licensing. Oi, mate, you got a license for that pie.
You got your pie sense. That was atrocious, and I apologise for ever making that.
Yes, so she can't get a meat pie sense because of the health and safety. You know, she doesn't have a nice sanitary work kitchen with those sort of stainless steel surfaces or whatever. Okay, she's not Ramsay. She's not even Oliver. I don't know why I said that. I think because what Jamie Oliver, you normally see him doing like cooking shows in like a home like setting.
Yes, yeah.
Obviously, it's actually a studio, but
it's actually a set.
Then you see Ramsay in the stainless steel kitchen. That's no shade against Jamie Oliver. I'm sure there are valid criticisms of him, but we haven't got time for that.
That's another podcast.
Yeah. I think this is really kind of building up her motivation of, actually, all things considered, I would quite like a town. I feel like I'd benefit from having a town. And that does build slowly and consistently through the episode, which I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing of it. I'm not here for the town, but don't you think it would be nice to try and fight for the town?
Yes.
I don't need it, but I might say I want it, Yes.
And he starts asking about the affair because, like, Max knows that she ran back after the first bulletin, but before the second. So, like, she will have seen it and she will have been pretty close by.
Yeah.
And so she's like, is the affair man, who he doesn't know who it is the affair man still around? And she's like, no, he's gone. He's nowhere to be seen. But of course, that's not quite true because of his job.
Yes. And they have this sort of, because Max is, during this conversation, it's very interestingly, after the last 2 days of craziness, he's finally decided to paint over a gap and the upstairs ceiling or wall, I believe it is. which is an interesting image of, he nearly owned the whole town, and now he's just doing a bit of housework he should have done ages ago. At the end of this conversation of Max talking about the fair, he asks, Val asks him, she says to him, "You can't just paint over damp." And he says, no, I got zinc. And there's got to be metaphor in there, because she's just asking, she's just saying, "I'm sorry. How many times do I need to say sorry?"
And he's like, "Indeed, how many?"
Yeah, exactly. It's this idea of you can't just paint over cracks, which I'm stumbling over, because it's Val who says you can't just paint over damp to Max, even though she's the one that's done wrong, even though she's kind of trying to turn it around and say that Max owes her, even though she's the one that cheated on him.
Well, exactly.
It's not as simple as, you can't just paint over the damp because you cheated on me and now you've just come crawling back and said it's sorry. But because she says it, it's that slightly more nuance of, she's kind of manipulating him. There's a lot of manipulation in the show when you start to dig into it.
Yeah, no, certainly. I agree with that completely. So now we go over to Danny, who is not quite left Swansea yet. He's still decided to meddle a bit. And his plan is to go to Claire's house. On the buzzer, it says B.Claire. So that's kind of funny. If you think that's fine, I don't know. Thing is, if they weren't making so many jokes about her weight, then Big Claire could be like a relatively harmless name.
Yeah.
And that would be like a fun little touch. But like, we've sort of come into this episode wanting to discuss this, and now it sort of...
It's everywhere.
Yeah, I have to like give a disclaimer there, yeah. But basically he comes in, and this is where we start to like actually learn more about Claire and her relationship with Rico, and we get a sense that she does actually like care about him, because she cares about his health and all this stuff. But unfortunately, also during the scene, she's basically says like, "We haven't had sex," and then Danny is like, "Oh, I didn't ask." But then like she keeps saying about what her intimate relationship with Rico is, and he's like, "No, I didn't ask. Please, I will never ask," this kind of stuff. And this is the point where it's like, this is not just the character is making a fat joke and we don't have to agree with the character. This is what Claire is saying. This is how Claire is being characterized.
Yeah.
And the idea of someone overweight being sexually active is done for comedy. I should just caveat that I haven't given every single fat joke up until this point. There are quite a few I had mentioned, so it's not like there were just two before this. There were like quite a few before this, but this is the point where it's like, no, you can't pass this off as anything but fatphobia.
I was watching a video essay yesterday, and it had nothing to do with this, but it was a retrospective about sexuality in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Really niche, but it was raising some interesting points about how, as a show that was on the air from the late 80s to the early 90s, had a problem largely, society as a whole had a problem largely with representing older women and sort of women who aren't conventionally attractive in a way that's sexually active, whereas women that were conventionally attractive, their whole gig as a character was being sexually active, and they couldn't exist in a storyline if it wasn't about their sex life or about being objectified by a man. And I think you're absolutely right, Louis. Here it is that idea that Claire is not a conventionally attractive woman. She's being pushed to the extreme end of the spectrum by being called a fat woman, and therefore it's the idea of, oh no, to sexualize her is disgusting.
Yeah.
So it's not just I think fatphobic. It's also bred deep in a specific form of misogyny.
Yeah. No, it's certainly the kind of misogyny you see when, like for example, TERFs go after cis women because they don't conform to ideals of femininity enough.
Yes. Yeah.
To give a more modern example.
Yes. Sorry.
No. I think it's interesting how it's all kind of the same thing. They're all branches of the same tree, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after this, Danny shows Rico some images of his family history and his departed wife, and he then has a heart attack because just the emotion of seeing the woman he was married to for over 40 years.
Rico, that is, not Danny.
No, yes. Then we cut to Maria like showing up at the house with Claire there, and she's trying to give a peace offering to Claire to say, hey, you have a free house now. Let me like be the estate agent for it, and I won't charge any like commission or whatever. And then that's our peace offering. We can sort of bury the hatchet after that.
Yeah.
But of course, Claire is just like staring blankly because she's in shock. And then like the ambulance pulls around the corner. Episode 3 Maria, who I think is not canon to episode 1 Maria, shouts at her, "Did you lie on top of him?" Just to get one in at every opportunity,
Question for you, Louis, I'm seeking your opinion here. When Danny shows these pictures to Rico, what do you think his intended outcome is? What's his intention there? Obviously, it's not to have caused a heart attack. I believe it's to try, because he's showing pictures of Rico's wife, it's to try and appeal to what sanity there is left within Rico, in Danny's opinion, and go, what is marrying this young woman actually what you want, or are you being manipulated here? In a sense, he's manipulating Rico emotionally.
I think it's to try and end this whole wild series of events.
Yeah.
He wants Rico to realise that this is ridiculous, and then just have a house on his own or something. Or I'm not sure. I really don't know his intention now. Like I would, when you asked, I was like, oh yeah, I think I know it. But like actually, I'm like he could have just gotten on a train.
I think there's something in the conversation he had with Max the night before. He doesn't want to leave Swansea because he doesn't want to go back to the boring, mundane life that he lived before. And he's I think it's one last ditch effort to make something happen. If I don't want this to just end.
Yeah. No, now I'm wanting to know more about Danny, because I kind of realize that he's sort of been this kind of conduit for the escalation of everything,
Yeah.
He waves his magic wand and it's all real now. And so now they have to do all that. But actually, I know, I think his intentions are interesting, and yeah.
Well, regardless of his intentions, Rico does have a heart attack and gets taken to the hospital.
Yes.
And Maria is having a go at Danny. And then Danny says, you should phone your mum and dad and let them know that this has happened. And Maria's like, no, they live 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
I'll just go and drive. Which can I just say, the thought of going, someone is a 5-minute drive away, I'll just drive to their house instead of phoning them, is so incomprehensible in my brain. I cannot imagine being like, oh, someone's just 5 minutes away in the car, let me just go drive and tell them something.
Okay, having family from South Wales, that's pretty on point, I think.
Well, yeah, I imagine.
I think sort of when a place is sort of spread out enough that you can kind of just drive anywhere and park anywhere, it's like you have no reason not to. Unlike living in like a dense city where like if you're going to drive somewhere, you'd have to think about parking, and so you better have a good reason to get in your car,
Exactly.
Really quite the opposite. So I felt that.
You'd also have to have a driving license.
Yes, yeah, I would.
As would I.
So Maria is now going to drive to them, but before she gets there, the Eggman shows up and he does like a signature, was it shake and a handshake, 2 pence, was it?
Oh, isn't it a shave and a hand?
Shave and a haircut, 2 cents, because it's Hollywood.
Shave and a haircut.
Yes. So he does the knock, 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 and Max hears this, and so he starts doing it while they're talking, and Val is like, Max is upstairs, he'll hear you, you need to get out of here. And he's like, I'm just delivering eggs. I'm just the Eggman. Is this a Beatles song? Because I'm just the Eggman, It is a really intense scene. It's like Max slowly makes his way down, like a horror movie villain that never needs to run,
He has got something of the, he's got something of the horror movie look about him. He can do a scary face.
So Max comes down as Sam is leaving. Sam has sort of left the building, but has not gotten into his van yet. Like, just seeing the look on Val's face of dread, Max realizes something is up and goes outside and catches the Eggman and just starts chucking eggs at him.
He literally bursts into tears and just starts throwing his eggs, because obviously he has clocked that this is who the affair was with.
And Sam just takes it. He doesn't fight back. He doesn't shield his face. He doesn't do anything. He just lets himself get egged with all of his precious eggs. If I was Sam, I would just think, hey, that's merchandise. I need to get money for that. But no, he feels like he deserves it, which I think is very interesting.
Interesting. So during this, Maria has come into the house, seen that this is happening, is very confused, so leaves and decides to leave a message on the answer machine.
Yes.
Max, after egging the Eggman, basically goes back inside the house and has this conversation with Val where he says he'd always thought that she would be having an affair with a man, he says, with a hunk, not an Eggman.
Yeah.
And then Val says, well, given that before I was having this affair, my life with you was so small that the only man I interacted with that wasn't you was the man that delivered eggs, so who else could I have an affair with?
Who else? That's such a good little line.
Another thing that, again, I don't know if Louis, I'm looking for problematic elements, but it's this idea that the Eggman is not a conventionally attractive man. You know, he's quite small. He's, one might say a bit measly. Is that the right word? Is that even a word? Measly. Weasley. He clearly is a man with very low self-esteem to let these eggs be chucked at him, and then for Max. I mean, maybe this is not the author saying this. This is Max and Val both sort of looking at this man and going, "This is not an attractive man. This is not the kind of a man you have an affair with. This is a symptom of Val's miserable life."
Max saying, "Oh, I can't believe it's this man," tells me about Max, right? But he thinks that, if she would be with this man, then like, what does that say about me?
Yeah.
Obviously, maybe it's not, about looks. Maybe it's about personality. Maybe you have bad vibes. Maybe you're unpleasant to be around, But he doesn't want to face that, so he deflects it as like, how could you be with someone less attractive than me,
Yeah, exactly. I suppose Max has this sort of sense of self where he's able to go, yeah, okay, I'm not the most attractive man in the world, but I think he has a lot of confidence, and this must confuse that. As I think of the psychology of affairs and marriages when they aren't quite perfect is fascinating.
Yeah, so now we're at the hospital. So they get the phone call that Maria sent, and they go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I think from here, I think the episode does get better, mainly because we stop getting all of the like fat jokes about Claire.
Yeah.
So Stella's there, the sister from last episode, and we find out that there is a do not resuscitate order on Rico because he's sort of really not in good shape after the heart attack. Now, sort of all these characters, all the family members, including Val's mum and her partner, are in like a waiting room, and so now we get to kind of have these introductions, and we get to see like Stella in the same room as people, and also they meet this new manager who's this mysterious woman who's become Candy's manager,
because she's given a lift to Candy from the we see her driving Candy in the car.
Oh yes. It's funny, she gets asked, do you have any experience managing, and she's like, no, I have no experience. And Candy is like, well, I have no experience being a pop star, so I think it's great. When people are asking her, okay, but like, who are you, where are you from, she says, "Ooh, 'twas another life, I don't look back." And it's like she's sort of quoting mantras more than actually saying anything.
Yes, because it's something,
which I think is a good touch.
It's a refrain that she used on Candy when Candy asked if she recognised her, and about the situation of when she had legs.
Yes,
to use the expression. So
then they play Candy's song to the family in the waiting room, and they're all like, "Oh, that's actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good." They
play it really quietly, and I don't know if this is just because they're in a hospital waiting room or if it's supposed to be some sort of gag.
I think a bit of both. I think you know those like videos of like Mall Wave like playing songs, but they're like, they sound like they're coming out from the other side of an empty shopping centre, invoking that liminal space. And I think hospital waiting rooms are very much a liminal space. They're somewhere you sit down and you wait, and you're there until you don't have to be there. And so I think I would say that it adds to that, yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's funny how I think I seem to recall the manager sort of getting everyone to be quiet and lean in as she played this very quietly.
No, yeah, see, this is what I like, talking about spaces and these aspects of sound design and really, really grounding it. That's pretty good. And this actually prompts Candy and Claire to make up. And so I guess this means that Claire is kind of no longer the villain of the week, you know?
Yes. I think it's an interesting moment because Candy comes straight in and sort of blames Claire for ruining everything. And then Candy's sort of retort is to say, yeah, but you didn't really care. You know, you only saw your granddad, you know, once a year, and you're complaining about never seeing him again. And Claire's sort of saying that she knew him better than everyone else because she can cite his like medication, what meds he took at what time of the day.
Yeah, and the arthritis and all that.
Which to me, it's very clinical because obviously this relationship started because Claire has a dental nursing MVQ. It's a clinical relationship that then becomes an engagement. I question the relationship between Claire and Rico. That's the first thing. She didn't really know him at all. She just knew him as an old man who needed caring for. And very quickly
they hit it off.
They just realise, that these differences between them are futile, and they hug. And there's a funny shot of Val's mum's friend / partner smoking in front of the no smoking sign as this happens.
Good stuff.
Amused me.
Hey, that's topical because of the potential outdoor smoking bans.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny how like I am so in two minds because like I know what my principles are, but I also know what cigarettes smell like.
But I did see a tweet
on
completely off topic saying how will 30-year-old single gay men make friends now, and I worry for the day where that potentially is me. Not that I'm a smoker.
No, but following people to the smoking area was already how I was doing it. Okay, I'm still a way off 30.
Yeah,
where did that number come from? Now, Leo gets a message on his mobile phone, which apparently, he never picks up on, always goes to on his phone, being a teenager. And he's at his shady business. And so he runs to the hospital, like wets his hair so that he can say he was swimming. And then Candy's like, oh, well, he was in the gay swimming team. And in the commentary, Russell said that like a big part of it is he doesn't realise he's gay yet, but he's already very good at lying about where he's been and making up excuses and all that stuff. Russ thought about this, and if by the end of the episode, Leo meets a cute guy, I think all will be forgiven.
Okay. My question to you, Louis. Does Leo run to the hospital because of the phone call, the voicemail he has from his father, or because he hears Candy's song on the radio? Because this confused me, because he seems to not, unless I'm mistaken, he seems to not move up to after the voicemail, but he hears Candy's voice on the boombox on the radio and goes, what is going on? I'm
not sure, but also I'm wondering why he would need to confront Candy tonight.
Well, yeah.
Like, if it's on the radio, it's too late, mate,
Yeah.
It is done.
I couldn't make head nor tail. It makes more sense for him to react to the phone call, but he seems to just be, because his dad says on the phone, there's going to be no change, there's no point rushing here, we could be here all night.
Yeah.
Because when Leo arrives back to the hospital, he gets into the waiting room with his wet hair, as Lou mentioned, and then he notices Candy's manager and sort of goes, I know you. Where do I know you from? She reveals that she was actually the school dinner lady.
I think he can tell she was the dinner lady. He's like, you were.
Okay.
Because she's always like, it was another life. I put in the note, okay, but what did she do? I'm so confused. Because they say something about we had to because of you or something. And I'm like, wait, what? I just couldn't quite catch it. What did she do?
I don't know. I didn't catch that either.
Because it's a bit, I don't know, anticlimactic as like a reveal.
Yes, I agree. But maybe she can't just have been introduced for this moment. I feel like we're going to see more from her.
If they hadn't have like hyped it up as much, then it would be a bit more surprising that, oh, she was a dinner lady. That's interesting.
She's a dinner lady stalker.
Well, I mean, the stalker bit is just because she followed Candy to the place and tried to get her autograph. which I guess is, that is stalking. But I'm wondering, like, what did she do between being a din lady and stalking Candy?
That's very true. Unless she's been doing that the whole time.
So I think it's implied that she stopped being a din lady once she ended up in a wheelchair for some reason.
Yeah.
Because she says, imagine me with legs.
Yes, exactly.
So, like, now she needs something to do, potentially, or maybe she has, like, an actual kind of motive with this. It's all a bit mysterious. I do hope we get more of this, but also just the fact that, like, they definitely said something about her having done something while as a dinner lady, but I replayed the scene like 5 times and couldn't quite figure out what they were saying. I was
Watch while I'm just gonna see if I can replay it and see if my ears give me anything. So Leo starts saying something and then cuts himself off. He says, "We had," and then he says a word that sounds like galection.
Yes, galection.
But I don't, and he says because, and then he cuts himself off because she gives him a look.
Yeah, but it's like, because of you we had, yeah. Very odd, very odd. Hopefully that'll be explained later on. Anyway, now Candy is encouraged to play her song to Rico, grandfather, and there's a bit where she sort of presses a play button and it cuts to her walking out saying, "I've just killed him."
That's probably the best joke in the entire show so far, that jump cut.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks, I did just double check. So Leo does only come to the hospital after he hears his sister singing and her name on the radio. And I still don't understand why, but I would like to hypothetically say he thinks that might kill his granddad if he hears it.
Okay. So now, Val's mum tells her that, I think at this point she does tell her that she can, like, void the contract Rico signed, reclaiming the town. Not all is lost, you can still get the town, but you just have to be the powerful woman we know you are. She's doing, like, Emperor Palpatine stuff.
Yes, I like your Bene Gesserit comparison. I think is very accurate.
I didn't want to keep making that comparison, so I was like, what's another one?
But I think it's very apt because after Rico dies, Val's mum says something along the lines of, "Another generation has now passed in the Vivaldi family. Now you are now at the centre." It was very. It started to make me think, oh my god, is this purposely so Bene Gesserit coded?
Yes, this is exactly what happened when my gran died.
Because it's so very focused on family trees and bloodlines.
Absolutely. Now it's sort of, because, what's done is done, they all leave. And just at that moment, Gethin shows up. He's drunk, and Maria's like, "God, where were you?" He's like, "Oh, I was out with the people from the office. I had no choice," kind of thing. Once they get into the car, Maria is like, "You know what? I'm going to get married to you," and he doesn't even, like, register it. And I'm just thinking, like, come on, Maria.
Yes,
there needs to be a better reason for you saying yes. Like, I know that you've just realised that life is short, but it's too short to pin yourself down to this guy.
Yes, this guy who I'm not even sure at this point remembers that he even asked you to marry him.
And he certainly won't remember that you said yes.
No, exactly.
So there's still time, Maria. And then Val's mum is speaking to her partner and is saying that she's confident in Val. She thinks that, she's more powerful than she looks. She'll get it done. And then her partner's like, you should really tell her. And she's like, "I'm not telling her yet. I decide when she finds out everything." There's some secrets they're hiding. It's a bit clunkily written because it's done so that the audience knows there's, like, a mystery, but none of the characters do. Yeah, I guess we'll find out what her deal is.
Is this the original RTD mystery box?
I guess.
The original, the one who waits is almost here.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the original, the one who waits is almost here, was like Bad Wolf, right?
Yes, I suppose, but I think I've seen more criticism, and maybe it's nostalgia based, for the way that more recent RTD mystery boxes are literally wrapped up and said, "Here is a mystery box," as opposed to "Here's something mysterious."
Okay, you know what? If we find out by the end of a series what it is, then it's Bad Wolf. If we don't, then it's The One Who Waits.
Oh gosh.
Just because Bad Wolf was done in the series finale, and The One Who Waits is still here, I think.
No.
Right? Or was Sutek The One Who Waits? Or it was someone else, right?
Sutek was The One Who Waits.
Okay, right.
It's just badly done.
No, yes, yeah. It was badly done, yeah.
But anyway.
So I thought The One Who Waits was like someone else that we hadn't seen yet.
No, because it's when Mrs.
No.
Well, this is why it's...
No, that's the boss. The meat says, wait till I tell the boss, and we don't know who the boss is. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
And Rogue got a new boss as well. So I think it's the same boss. But it's when Mrs. Flood goes, he waits no more, at the beginning of The Legend of Ruby Sunday.
Yes.
Anyway.
Turns out he waited a bloody long while.
Just like we're waiting to get to the point.
Yeah. No, it is funny the amount of things where it's like, I've been here the whole time, and it's like, how many people have been here the whole time, you know?
Yeah.
Do they all chat to each other while they're waiting the whole time, you know, during all the adventures? Like, anyway, please forget what we just said, because we got onto the topic of Doctor Who.
I presume this will only be heard in the blooper episode.
Oh, no. It's too good, I'm sorry. So we don't know what Val's mum's secret is, but Maria agrees to get married, and then Max tells Val that he wants her back, and he's like, you know, at the end of the day, I know you had an affair, but I want you back, I love you. And so they decide to send Leo home in a taxi while they walk the long way along the beach and discuss the stuff. And in that discussion, Val tells Max that, hey, you know, I had like an uncle who like made a bunch of really bad impulse purchases just before he died, and he was posthumously declared like insane, and all of those were kind of reversed, and it was all fine in the end. And you need to do this with your father. Get me the town. Anyway, the next morning, which is now Thursday, Max is driving recklessly with Val, and everyone is calling him mad, and it's a mirror to the opening scene. But instead of driving Danny around, he's driving Val around, because Val is his queen. She was fearless and crazier than him. She was his queen, and God help anyone who dared to disrespect his queen. That's the vibe. And so Max storms into the town hall and says, this contract, rip it up, null and void, don't care anymore. I have a town, you all work for me, I run the bins, I will be paying your salary. The council tax is now the Max tax.
I love that.
Iris says, this goes against democracy, and he's like, this is not a democracy, this is private land. Wait till this guy hears about rotten boroughs. He's going to poo his pants. Like, he's going to be so excited.
I can't wait to use that line to be like, you know, if I ever have children and they try and speak back to me, I'll say, this is not a democracy, this is private land.
Yeah. So Iris, being the level-headed council leader who has kept her cool this whole time, hits the fire alarm and says, yeah, everyone leave the building.
Leaving Max and Val all by themselves. It's sort of Iris having a last fuck you to the Vivaldi, saying, okay, if you want this town, let's see you do this all by yourself without all our trained salaried staff.
Yes.
And Maria and it's Maria and Gethin?
No, it's Maria and Danny.
I thought it was Maria and Gethin, because obviously they're together.
Are you checking? Or?
Oh, no, it is Maria and Danny. That says in my notes.
I figured Gethin might be a bit hungover to run out the house. Yeah.
Maria and Danny have run in sort of, and I thought it was weird. They're hearing a fire alarm going off and they're not evacuating the building with everyone else. They're presuming it's fake and running up to find their mum and dad.
Engulfed in flames.
And Val puts a hand on Max's shoulder and says to Maria and Danny, welcome to Swansea. And that's the theme of the credits rolling.
That is the theme music, yeah.
Which sort of, I did think it was a bit of a whiplashy ending, because it's quite like a dramatic, epic moment.
Yeah.
It's silly, but not quite as comedic as some other moments. And then you get the most silly theme tune of all time.
Yeah, it's... I think it's interesting because this is kind of where episode 2 would have ended up if there weren't as many like twists and turns. We're sort of back on track now, but like, yeah, they own the town. Presumably now we need to watch them like try and run it.
Which is what I'm excited. Maybe it's part of me that like sort of city management video games. I'm like, oh, this is going to be really fun trying to see them run the whole town by themselves.
Okay, yes, I'm gonna try and do something about city skylines for the next episode as a bit. you know. Hey, listen, if the council are city skylines, then you know what Max and Val are.
Me playing City Skylines after this podcast.
No, they are City Skylines 2.
Yeah,
which. Yeah. Was not well reviewed. I believe it has the worst rated DLC on Steam just because they released a DLC with so little content. It ended up being a real kind of fall from grace from the original City Skylines. What can you do? You can run Swansea is what you can do. You can sort out the bins. So I think before we finish, there's something we didn't get to when discussing the episode that you mentioned, Zach, and I would really want to hear more from you about this. And it's RTD's writing of women.
Yes.
In this show.
Right. I think it's interesting. So we touched upon, so obviously one of the things that we have discussed throughout this episode, it was a big thing we were looking into, was the representation of Claire. And we sort of touched on how it's not just fatphobia, but it's also sort of an intersectional issue with misogyny. And it was something that... thinking about after watching Bob and Rose, and I discussed Bob and Rose with my good friend Pip, who's a friend of the podcast, who sort of praised Bob and Rose and much of Russell T Davies' writing for being shows written by a man that understands how women talk. Because, for instance, I've watching television shows from the 90s that are written by men, and they have two women talk to each other. They clearly have either never spoken to a woman or never listened to a woman when she speaks. Whereas, Pip said something really interesting to me about how it's evident that Russell T Davies listens to women when they speak and understands that women are different to men, usually in the way that they speak about things, because of the way that they have different intersectional issues, and how this does cause them to react to things differently and speak differently. And it's a big thing that a lot of male writers could really learn from. But I've been thinking about when watching Mine or Mine, and just thinking a lot of the female characters so far in the early episodes have been so one-dimensional compared to some of the male characters. So Candy being the sort of the stereotype of the dumb ditzy blonde, Claire being subject to so much the fatphobia. The stuff that you've been pointing out today about Maria, and the fact that she's a very clever character that says in that first episode how she pretends to be dumb, but we sort of see her be rather unintelligent victim of Gethin's manipulation throughout all this, and Val very much having her whole life revolve around her identity as a wife, as a carer. I think that interesting stuff is being done with Val, and the idea of this affair and her complaining, and the idea of her mother. But a lot of it, those characters revolve around women as caregivers in society and sort of having little identity beyond those roles. And I'm wondering how dimensional these women are compared to, say, Rose in Bob and Rose, who is one of the most nuanced, complex television characters I'd probably say of that period in this genre of British television. Maybe that's an unfair comparison because of this is a lot more comedic.
There's an ensemble cast.
Exactly. And I'm now in my head, I'm thinking, well, is Leo as nuanced a character? But I kind of feel like Max and Danny are our most complicated male characters. So I'm just thinking maybe the women aren't maybe as fleshed out as other RTD shows have fleshed out women, or we're just sort of sinking into patterns. And maybe I'm completely overanalyzing it because I've been thinking about it, but I think it's something to be alert about.
Yeah.
And like I say, we're only halfway through the show. I think there's always a lot of potential for these things to be set up and then for them to be developed more. And the conversation that Val and Max had in episode 3 about Val's world being so small because of her relationship with Max is actually incredibly nuanced and very interesting. And I want to go away and think more about that, because it's a really interesting idea, and how that leads to the affair.
Yeah.
And it's not just the bored wife has an affair. It's more interesting than that.
Yeah.
So those are my rambles that are sort of half fleshed out at the moment, but I hope that's interesting.
I think something that's half fleshed out for me is sort of how kind of forgiving were we of, for example, in Queer as Folk, there was only one gay character of colour and they didn't even speak English, and then all the other sort of characters of colour like were kind of outside that community, and there was no sort of acknowledgement of the intersection. And, you know, we sort of noticed it, but I guess sort of forgave it, because ultimately, you know, we did come away from that show pretty well. And are we being more critical now because Mine All Mine is not as groundbreaking of a TV show? And should we be more critical of the shows we've watched previously when these things come up? Am I phrasing that right? Like,
I know what you mean. It makes me think about something else, not to bring it back to Doctor Who, but something Russell T Davies has said about the most recent series of Doctor Who and Dot and Bubble, for those who've seen it, where it's basically got an all-white cast apart from Rashida Gatwa as the Doctor, and in the behind-the-scenes show, Russell T Davies points out that he wondered how long it would take for viewers to notice that, because television is incredibly diverse nowadays. And 20 years ago, it was not. This kind of British television was incredibly, incredibly white. And I think us looking at things like that and pointing it out and rightly criticising it, valid. But I don't wish to say that. I don't wish to point a finger at, say, Russell T Davies or Nicola Schindler and say it's your fault for not making Mine All Mine or Queer as Folk or any of these shows more diverse, because it is a symptom of not just the period but also the industry, because it's really hard for sort of actors of colour to sort of be almost to be able to be cast because of these problems within the industry. And I know the last sort of 9 months of me dipping my toe into the industry and sort of working with actors on producing films, and how basically been told, even nowadays, especially in sort of, you're talking about low budget, up and coming young people that want to be actors, it's really hard to find actors of colour who are able to put themselves out there to be able to be cast.
no, certainly. And I think on that point, in the commentary, there was only one mention of the fat jokes, and that was just kind of fairly sort of standard for the time.
Yeah.
And so should we come down too hard on that? Because it was the element that happened to age poorly when other stuff in the episode didn't.
Yeah. I agree.
But also maybe counterpoint, maybe we should, because as you mentioned, the link between that and misogyny, and also the fact that people like to say that it's something that, you know, you can have control of, when actually that's probably not true. And in any case, there's no benefit to making people feel shit about themselves. Maybe we shouldn't spend too much time like making jokes about it, and no matter when something is being made. So, you know, I guess as long as it's not happening now, we'll let it be an aspect of television history.
Yeah. Gosh, we got quite heavy at the end there.
You got to do it sometimes, you know?
No, you have.
Let's hope that the episode 4 is a romp and they make a reference to something that I can talk about for like a few minutes to sort of ground the episode in our modern context. And then we'll have a normal one, because this was not a normal one, but they can't all be normal ones, can they?
No, exactly.
Thank you, Zac, for joining me yet again to look at Mine All Mine, this show from 2004 about Swansea, a beautiful seaside town with lots of attractions like a beach and a market and maybe some other stuff. But, you know, it's a Welsh seaside town. What else is there? You can follow us on Instagram at Davis on Davis. You can follow me at Instagram on Louis on Air and Twitter at Louis on the Air. But for how much longer? I don't know. They banned it in Brazil. That's a big country. It's not looking good. And Zac, do you have anything to plug?
No, Louis. Unfortunately, all this discourse has made me feel far too serious to plug anything. So I'm just going to tell everyone at home to go and turn their phones off, turn their laptop off, and just stare at a wall for 5 minutes and think about what they've done to stop misogyny.
Okay.
Sorry, was that
Just stare at a wall. No, I love that. If you don't like staring at walls, just read.
No, I want no stimulation whatsoever.
Okay. Go into a sensory deprivation tank and think about what you've done.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
See you, everybody.